The format's simple, bring on 4 quality guests, they each bring a question, and we get to ask those questions of our fellow individuals and see what comes out the back of it. Before we get going on today's questions, we're just going to get a quick 60-second introduction to each of you. So let's start with you, Wayne. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Wayne Loon. I am the Managing Director of Abbey Office Solutions. We're based in Totton in Southampton.
Thanks, Wayne. Robin?
I'm Robin McMillan. I'm Chief Executive of Exton Park Vineyard. I only joined 2 months ago, but I've had 30 years in the wine industry.
Thanks, Robin. Brennan?
Hi, so I'm Brennan Jacomb, Greenspace UK. We've been trading for almost 10 years, and we've had significant growth year on year, and we primarily transform people's conservatories. So
Thanks, Brennan. Chris?
I'm Chris Williams of Williams Shipping. We are a marine and logistics company founded in 1894, and the business is run by myself and my 2 cousins, split across the different operating divisions that we've got.
Thank you very much, gents. Really appreciate that. Right, so let's move on to the questions.
Right, so my question is, essentially, we're all into our businesses, and this is what we do day to day. So we get up in the morning, we go to work because we enjoy it, and we have a focus, we have a purpose in our life. I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm going to be looking to retire. What's my next purpose?
In 2020, just around the beginning of lockdown and so on, I consciously took the decision to retire, partially because I could, and of course the financial side of things is uppermost in everyone's mind. You need to be able to afford to retire. I was lucky enough that I could, and my expectation was that I was saying to people what I was going to do was give something back. That was my purpose. So I really felt that I could give something back to the industry that had been so good to me. So I've been part of a mentoring group and volunteering and so on. But what I found was that it was too brutal. It was too brutal to stop. And when you talked about cutting it off, that's the lesson I've learned. I don't think you should be cutting it off. What you should be doing is kind of maybe winding it down in different ways. So my current role at Exton Park, I'm 3 days a week instead of the 5, normal 5. And, we're in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and it's a beautiful office and everything else. So you can carry on with the networks that you're talking about, but you're just starting to kind of reduce the hours, reduce how involved you are in that piece. And that gives you an opportunity to sit back and say, well, what else could I do with that time, I think. But I think you need time to think about it and to try some things, which is what I've done. And I've come back, but I've come back on a different basis to what I was doing before, which is very much the corporate, full-time, full-on, quite large organisations.
It's quite interesting because I've given myself a time scale, and I'm trying to make myself redundant. So over the next few years, and part of that is not going into the office consciously, not going into the office on a Monday and a Friday. Still working, but outside of the office, and hopefully get to a point where I can do 3 days a week, because my job there's an MD as an overview from a higher level, not from a micromanaging, which I try not to do anyway. That I think is going to be that progression personally, but it's still, there's some point when you do have to go, right, I now need to walk away, and I'm now not the boss. I'm now not responsible for all my staff and all my customers. That's somebody else's job, and that's kind of that. Where does that sit with me psychologically? And I'm trying to come to terms with that. And I'm still a few years down the road, but not many, but a few years down the road to where that needs to be. I don't know what your thoughts are, because with all due respect, you seem a lot younger than us. There's no way you started this business in 18, what was it?
1894. No, I mean,
you're looking good on it. You're looking
Benjamin Button syndrome.
That makeup though.
I suppose it's. I'd probably answer this slightly different to everyone else, because we're, the business that we've got, we although we're running the business, we see ourselves very much as custodians. That is always how we go into it, and I'm sure you can imagine over the years we've had offers to sell and for the business to be brought out in different forms, and we've always said no, it's not. That's not the purpose of it. It's to it's to sort of grow and develop and be passed down and hopefully diversify along that timeline, so that other people have got different parts of the business to sort of take hold of, which is what's happened with myself and my cousins. But I think when we get to the point where we're looking at our exit strategy, I'll be looking at my kids, and seeing if they've got an interest in it, and what maybe their path is going to be. And that's probably where I'll get my involvement from being retired, is almost mentoring them and getting involved and seeing what they're doing, and maybe being on the sidelines, but maybe giving advice, or just helping out where needed, really.
Thanks, Wayne, for that question. I hope that was useful.
Very much indeed, yeah.
It was certainly stimulating to listen to everyone's thoughts. Right, so moving on to the next question. Robin, over to you. Ambushed in your own home.
I guess actually sort of building a bit on Wayne's question, but kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. We were talking about how I retired and retirement. When you do retire, I think you kind of look back a bit and go, okay, you want a career that you've been proud of, and it's been very fulfilling and so on. And one of the things I'm quite interested about in terms of my own style and my own approach as I've developed my career and looking back on it has been, what would I have done differently? And I think that's a really interesting piece to kind of put out there for us as a group, just to inform, if you like, I think future leaders and so on as to what they might do differently. If you're ready to admit what you might have done differently in retrospect after your illustrious and successful careers.
When I look back to when we started, I never really planned on having my own company anyway, and it was myself and a business partner, and then we went our separate ways. I think for certainly the first few years, there was a lot of management through fear of losing people, and maybe not having enough confidence in myself, because it wasn't anything I really set out to do. So I think that if I was to start again, I'd have the confidence now of, yeah, you can do it and you'll be all right. So I think there's that, but you don't have that at the beginning, do you? So as you say, you are learning as you go along. But
so it's kind of sort of say it's going to be all right. Have the confidence in what you believe in and run with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Josh, do you want to have a crack at this one?
Very similar to Brennan, I think, looking back. So I remember when I very first started and I had to get into sales, I set up a design and marketing business to start with. And I was so nervous from a confidence perspective. I used to have to go downstairs to Mum and Dad's liquor cabinet and have a vodka lemonade. I remember doing it. I was like,
liquor cabinet.
Yeah. Well, it's not liquor. I was thinking about it's a cupboard under the sink with vodka and stuff in, right? And I'm like, I'm going to make myself a vodka lemonade. I'm going to get some Dutch courage, and then I'm going to make this phone call. So I remember that because how nervous I was about trying. I met somebody at the pub and they're like, right, actually give me a call because we need some new websites and stuff. And I was like, right, okay, this is my first lead. I'm definitely doing this. But I really suffered with the confidence of doing that. And one thing I learned a couple of years after was my environment, like the people you surround yourself with, being encouraging and uplifting, and how much of a positive impact that had on my mentality. So if I could go back in time, probably one thing that I would do sooner is really focus on my environment. Because I think my environment, if I had a more positive environment around me, that would have given me more confidence, which would allow me to make that call without necessarily having to have the vodka lemonade. So moving on to the next question, Chris.
My question is how do we as business owners manage our work-life balance to make sure we can achieve our business objectives whilst also being the best parents and spouses as well. So I thought that would be a good one to ask, really. Hopefully some good discussions on that. So I'll start with you, Brennan.
I don't think you can, to be honest. I think to try and get the balance, I personally just try to be not too bad at any one thing at any one time for too long a period. I can't be a brilliant leader at work and a brilliant husband and a brilliant father. I just don't think there's enough hours in the day to just be that present with any one thing. I think maybe it's just me.
It's a nice way to think about it, because if you think about it that way, I guess you don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Well, my man once told me that, and I just thought, you know what? Then I felt a lot better about not being quite. And as long as I'm not really bad for any prolonged period at any one of them, then I feel better about myself.
Okay. I mean, there's so many more time constraints now, aren't there? I think that's the problem. I know, speaking to probably to my cousins a little bit, as well as my father, but you just didn't have, they had fax machines, and things like that. So there wasn't messages popping through all the time about things going on at work. It was sort of like, well, I can actually have the drive home and have that sort of unwind, and then there might be a message at some point, or there might be a phone call, there might not. But now I think you're constantly attached, aren't you, to what's going on at the business, whilst still in your castle, in your home with your family.
I think my business is or my industry is slightly unique, because essentially we offer that service from 9 till 5. So from a day-to-day point of view, no one in my office is there much beyond 5 o'clock, because the phone doesn't ring. Nobody needs to be in there answering the phone. So there is already that culture of come into the office, do your work. Me personally, I had this conversation we had like a staff meeting. We have every month. We've got a beer fridge that works. We all just have a 4 o'clock on a Friday. And I said that, the thing to realise is I've been doing this, I've been entrenched in this business for 30 years nearly. If I don't want to come in 5 days a week, that is my choice. The sad thing is, you lot work for me and you're contracted to be here Monday to Friday. Now, I didn't say it I probably did say it in those terms, but it was tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
So the point is that, if I need to go off and our service manager, our workshop manager daughter was first day at school on Tuesday, can I come in? Absolutely, of course you can. I mean, if I said no, what sort of person, human being would I be? The thing that I've always tried to do is employ people before I need them. And somebody gave me that advice recently, and I thought, I've done that for like the last 30 years. So, I think I need to have another engineer, but I haven't got the work for him at the moment. But there's no point in trying to, from my point of view, is try and get that engineer when I need them. Let's get them in now. I need 2 girls in on, for accounts. We've got one. Let's get another one in before she gets to a point she's not enjoying her job and leaves. So we don't have a high turnover of staff, thankfully, and hopefully that won't be the case ever going forward, with the exception of sales. Because salespeople are just a breathing.
Because you're preempting any pressure that might come under
Absolutely
through
right.
workload and everything.
Yeah. So try and
there's
so
a price, of course, a cost associated with that, but financial versus well-being.
Well, there is, but if you actually look at it in the long run, there isn't.
Yeah.
Because you've already nipped the issue in the bud before it becomes an issue. Mm-hmm. So I've always tried to strive, and so like now we're already talking about we're not quite there, and we know we need another engineer. We know we need an apprentice professional service guy, and so we're already going to start looking. So for the idea is that come January, early New Year, they'll be in place already.
Yeah.
We don't need them right now. We can actually quite carry on without them.
Yeah.
Not a problem. So from my point of view, I've got a really understanding wife, and she knows that, my son's 9. They call it Wayne time. So every time I need to have time on my own or daddy time, then I'm allowed to. So I've got a really understanding family. But I am always there every evening and every weekend. Be it I don't go and play golf. So that's my agreement that I have with my wife. I've never really, if I'm honest, since I've had my business work weekends. I might do the odd Saturday morning, but I've been so lucky that I've never needed to do it. So I'm probably a bit of a charlatan here to say,
you just got it right.
Exactly. You've got a good setup.
You should work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and while you're building your business. And it's not that I have never worked Saturdays. I probably haven't actually worked every Saturday.
Good stuff. All right. Is that all helpful, Chris?
That's perfect. Yeah. Really useful. Thank you.
Right. Rolling on to the next question.
I think my question's based really around growth and the growing pains, I suppose, as companies grow, and just looking at how basically what have you all experienced?
I mean, I touched a little bit on it earlier about the mistakes that I'd learned from trying to probably being a little bit ambitious with our growth early on, certainly on our wheelbox side of the business, which is probably the easiest one to grow, site accommodation and containers, where we were just sort of setting up depots up and down the country. And we went really quick with that. We did it, over a few years. We went from 3 locations to sort of over 20 locations, all the way from Scotland down through the southwest. So it really, got good coverage of the UK. I think with the mistakes that were made are probably in poor choices, finding locations to go to. One thing we always, we're very clear about is sort of how we were going to, run the business in terms of our customers, who we were going to, our target market. And I think we didn't try and do anything too clever. We didn't try and sort of break the mold, so to speak. We just wanted to replicate what we were doing. You know, we were looking very much for mid-tier construction firms. We weren't trying to get involved too much with the big players or, you know, your small one-man bands. We were going very much mid-tier, and that was our target market. So I suppose my point is, with that, we still had a plan in terms of where we were going with it. So we didn't have to we had new locations and we probably had more inquiries, but we weren't having to change the actual way the business was running, I suppose, you know, dealing with you know, bigger customers that maybe had different processes. That was going to be a bigger admin burden for us and things like that. You know, it was core market for us. But I think generally it's all about it's just being steady and sensible, I think. And if you can identify early, as your question sort of saying about the strains on the business through growing those pressures, I think you've got to identify them early on. And if you've got a 5-year and a 10-year plan, and you maybe know where the pinch points are going to be in your business and where you might have the struggles, identify those, you know, beforehand. I'd say, if you think, oh, actually this is going to be difficult because my accounts package is not going to be able to, you know, handle it, or I don't have enough sales staff or something like that. As Wayne mentioned earlier, think, well, okay, I'm going to try and grow by 20% next year or whatever it might be. I probably should get 2 guys in early doors and maybe get that new software package in now, so that I've got a bit of capacity to do it. It's all about that capacity to grow, and probably don't take too much on. I think that's where I went wrong before. You know, I'm trying to set up a depot in Lincoln at the same time as setting one up in Aberdeen. I can only be in one place at one time, and you're sort of spinning so many plates. So I think, yeah, have a plan, have a really clear strategic plan, and do it right, do it once, I suppose, would be my takeaway on that.
So if you're looking, for example, going from 20 million to 50, and so you're thinking, right, next year this is where we're going to be, you're almost looking at, well, actually, what's getting the processes and procedures for bigger where you plan to be? Is that forward?
Yeah, and I'd say you don't want to get too roped up in it, because it's easy to do. But look at your competitors. Don't sort of dwell on what they're doing. But if there is a big company in your marketplace, maybe just see how they're structured. Sometimes it's really useful, because what we like to do is we go head to head with companies that are a lot bigger than us. But we win quite often because we're a lot more nimble. We've got smaller teams, but we're a lot more, you know, personable as a company. So we can pick up the phone to people and talk to them, rather than all these other kind of automated steps that the big companies put in place to kind of get their order processing done. We'll sort of, you know, cut corners a little bit. So it's really good to see, right, what does my competitor do? How are they structured? How many people they've got? How many departments have they got? What software do they use? Things like that. But then think, maybe they don't need to do that. So we could maybe go halfway here, but probably achieve just as much as what they're doing. So yeah, it's all preparation's key. It's all in the planning, and then if you have to delay your growth targets, I suppose, by a year, but you're better planned to execute them, you're going to have a much better outcome.
I mean, my answer was going to be very similar to Chris's, and in fact, you've already touched on it as well. Which, I mean, we're talking about sort of gearing for growth, really, aren't we? So, if you've got this plan for substantial growth, I think my advice would be to listen to all the voices, not in your head necessarily, but all the voices around the table. So, if you're at a board level, for example, because too often the sales, the marketing piece, the growth piece, growing our profits, growing our revenue gets the airtime. And then everyone else follows behind, because of course, if we're going to go from 20 to 50 million pounds, that's great, let's go, end of meeting. But you've got to have the HR person or the representative, even if it's you, sort of saying, hang on, what about the people? You know, how are they going to feel about this growth? What do they need about this massive change? What about the infrastructure? What about the logistics? What about the IT? I think you were talking about as well, Chris. Cash flow. What's this going to look like over the subsequent years? And let's make sure we spend almost as much time investing in that than we do in the growth aspect of it. It just gets too often neglected. The usual mantra of growth is great, keep the costs minimal, and we'll improve our profits that way, as opposed to growth is great, let's invest in that growth and our infrastructure, and the profits will still keep coming because it will be sustainable.
Right, gents, moving on to our very last question. What is the most ridiculous thing you have wasted money on? To end us. So what is the most ridiculous thing you've all wasted money on? I will start with Chris Williams. Let's start with you, sir.
You waste money on Chris.
What's the most ridiculous thing you wasted money on?
I hope my wife's not watching this. There's I don't know if any of you have heard of a Wahoo kicker. I went through this phase during lockdown of thinking that I was going to be the next triathlon star. So I got really into triathlon, joined all the clubs, started doing all of the, got a silly bike and all that kind of stuff. And I bought this thing that is sat in our garage at the moment. It's like a turbo trainer. You put your bike on it. It's got a screen, computer hooked up to it, all of that kind of stuff, and all the cogs on it and all the bits and pieces in it. And you basically cycle against people all around the world and do all the tracks, and it's got resistance on it. So you go up, you go up a hill on the screen, it takes you up, and you go down, it goes like that, and it blows air in your face and all this kind of stuff. I've been on that twice. And it wasn't the most expensive thing in the world, but it wasn't cheap. And I think it's more in terms of cost per use. It's probably up there with my golf club membership, to be fair. But that's the worst thing. But my wife still to this day, she's like, we've got to get rid of it. That's going on eBay. It's got to go. I'm like, no, I love that thing. I love every time you
go on it.
Yeah, I was like, you go out to bed with the with the kids and all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm doing. I'm down there training, but I'm not. I'm probably watching an episode on Netflix or something like that. So that's that's the one that springs to mind. That's the most ridiculous purchase, I think.
Nice. Thanks, Chris. Brennan, coming to you.
Bought a tree. Bought a tree. I mean, really, does nothing. I like it.
What was the thought process?
I don't know. It was. I thought it'd be lovely. Birds would go on it, and it'll be really pretty.
You're big into your birds, aren't you?
I am, but nonetheless, I mean,
How much was this tree?
well, I have had it 20 years. So if you start breaking it down, it's only
It's better than Chris's
40 quid a year.
two years.
But yeah, it was far more than what I should have. And it was literally all the money I had at the time. I mean, ridiculous, really. But anyway.
Is this a kind of impulse buy, was it, Brendan? Yeah.
Well, I've still got it 20 years on, so you could argue
it's got some longevity to it, that's for sure.
So 20 years ago, you took all of your disposable cash.
Well, it wasn't all of it, but it was more.
A significant amount.
Yeah.
And bought a tree.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Fair
It's been
play.
with me everywhere I've gone.
What, because you've moved house recently. You've moved house in those 20 years.
Yeah, I'm not
So
leaving that. It cost me loads.
so you dug it up. And
That's in
then
a massive pot.
What sort of tree is it?
Big fig tree.
Right, okay.
You get any figs from it?
No.
I feel like in the highlight edit of this video, we need like a picture of this fig tree so that we can just cut it into
it's
the
not
video.
looking
If you
good
can
right
send
now.
it to us, that'd be great.
Bite.
Well, next time you need to transport it to your next home,
Absolutely.
we can get you involved in that,
Well,
can't we?
it will be abroad, so yeah, nice.
Stick it on the back of the van, or we'll probably need a flatbed truck by the sound of it. 20 years old.
Love that.
Goodness me.
Right, Wayne, beat that.
No, I can't. I'm done. It's cars, mate. Cars. I very rarely buy a car that actually I make money on. I've never bought a car that I've made money on, and I just waste money on cars. Just can't
What, so
help it.
classic cars, Wayne?
No, for that was on mate.
But you never make money on cars unless they're
Actually,
kind of
that's to be fair. No,
collectible.
because I have bought one car that I know I've made money on, and I've still got, which is an old Series.
Which
2
one would
Land
have been the
Rover.
most ridiculous
okay.
then? You just think it was a waste of money?
That GLE AMG that I had. That Mercedes. I mean, it was a great car. I mean, that's an extravagant thing, isn't it? You could go down to. I'd say no. Barbados. That bottle of brandy that I bought that we bought when we were in Barbados.
Yeah, okay.
That's in my cupboard. I haven't drunk
Yeah,
it.
so we went to a.
Josh has gone very quiet. For
No,
a minute
do you
there.
know what?
He took a big
There's
gulp.
there's a bit
like,
more. Well, no,
hang on.
I thought he was going to say Barbados.
Don't mention how much. Don't mention
I
how much.
organised the trip to Barbados and for members, and I thought it was just to say it was a waste of money. So
Okay. I thought you
I was like,
paying.
I hope it doesn't say Barbados. So I thought it was a great trip.
Yeah, it was a great trip.
You
There
didn't,
was a
buy
little-
you didn't buy in the bottle of brandy?
Well, actually, Chris, I did, because this is what happened, right? We're in this rum distillery and we're doing a tour, and they're like, "Oh, do you want a hand engraved bottle of
It was rum, actually,
rum?"
right? Not
Yeah.
brandy. It was rum.
So Wayne's like, being Wayne, yeah, I'll have one. So he gets the live thing in there, and he's like, "Oh, Josh, can you
Lend me the money.
pay for this for me? Can you lend me the money for it?" So I ended up buying it for him. He did pay me back, to be fair.
I can't remember why I borrowed the money off you though.
I don't know, he did take your bank card or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't.
But anyway, yeah. Have you drunk? I don't suppose you drunk it, have you?
No, it's in my generally in my cupboard.
Yeah.
I haven't. It was like 350 quid.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
My wife was over the moon when I can't remember that because to be fair, it's engraved.
Yeah.
With all the people that we were on that
Cool.
trip with.
Nice.
So yeah, that's probably my biggest waste. Of money.
Right. So we've got Chris. Remind me of the name of that toy that you've got used twice.
A Wahoo kicker.
A Wahoo kicker. We've got a tree. We've got a bottle of rum.
So we need a photo of all of these, right?
Yeah, we do. Let's get those photos. Okay. Right, Robin. Coming to you.
A fan.
A fan.
So there's a bit of a story to this, but in the vineyard here, one of the biggest risks to any vineyard is frost. And one of the ways of countering frost is, particularly at the bottom of our vineyard, where the mist starts to congregate and that in itself can then produce the frost, is to blow it away. So down there, and yes, there will be a picture, is a massive fan that we bought last year. Which it's automatic, so Fred, who's our vineyard manager, can control it from his house. You know, it doesn't need to be in the vineyard at the time. So an alarm will go off to say that the frost is, it's frost risk. Fan will come on, blast the mist away, and hopefully you get away with it. The only problem was we had no frost last year. So we've got this thing which cost tens of thousands of pounds sitting there doing absolutely nothing. But it is a part of, we were talking about the long term and investing in your business in the long term. That's what it is. Because if we are hit by frost, we'll lose 20-30% of our crop.
So it's not a waste of money then, is it really?
So it was last year and so far, but I'm very confident
Preventative
that we will get its use in due course. Yeah, so that's probably, at the moment anyway.
Nice one.
Quite handy during the heat wave, though. Did you have it sort of pointing in at the office? And so?
Well, yeah, we could do it. We've got air conditioning, luckily, but it's a good thought. Yeah.
All right, gents. Look, I just want to say thank you very well. First of all, thank you very much, Robin, for being our host here today.
Pleasure.
Super appreciate it. Thank you to you guys. Again, really appreciate your time and making the effort to be here. I hope those of you that have listened and just watched it have enjoyed it, and I look forward to the next episode. So thanks a lot.